Next week's Airport Authority meeting may or may not allow for citizens wishing to speak regarding Paulding Northwest Atlanta Airport's relationship with Propeller Investments to bring a limited commercial service to the site. Following the Board of Commissioners' November morning session, Post 2 Commissioner Todd Pownall, who did not support the bond issue tied to the airport, commented on both public meeting formats and the Propeller Investments initiative specifically.
The citizens should have an opportunity to speak. I think they should, as long as the citizens being respectful and the meetings being respectful, I think the citizens should be able to speak in a timely manner. I mean, you can't just open it up and somebody go on for an hour. But I think in all meetings, citizens should have the opportunity to speak. I would like to see in our commissioner meetings that when there's something on the agenda that comes out and people look at that agenda over the weekend and they see there's a concern of theirs, that they have the opportunity to speak without calling ahead and getting on the agenda by Friday at 5 o'clock.
Among citizens wishing to speak during the board's morning session for November was J.W. Louie, who spoke to the board about use of SPLOST funds for the fire station that would be built at the airport site.
My concern is the timing. Are these funds being diverted from these other public projects to support a private, non-approved FAA commercial expansion of the airport that was just announced 6 weeks ago? People in this county are now becoming aware of the commercial expansion plan that you approved a year ago with no public input. Code words and closed-door meetings do not count. They now live in fear and in intimidation because of a lack of information from you. The FAA has not approved this commercial expansion plan, so it is not a done deal by any means. We all want what is best to provide new jobs and income to Paulding, but does it have to be dependent on an already rejected plan from New York?
You expressed some concern at the way the business venture was communicated or not communicated, but do you have?
Well, I think there's still a lot of people that would still like to get some information on exactly how things are going on with that. I feel like, as a citizen, I feel like they talk about they were always going to do this part of the expansion of the airport as far as extending the runway and the taxiway and widening the taxiway and so forth, whether this guy came or not. But at the same time, this expansion's here, they're wanting to bring in the commercial, so now they're doing this, and they've tied this to this fella. In fact, they've said that he would make the payments on the bond until the FAA paid back. And when the FAA paid us back, then he would expect any of his money back except the interest. In other words, he would expect any money he paid back other than the interest that we had to pay on the bonds. Mm-hmm. So that ties us to them, and I don't know that that's the right way to do business.
Rebounding from some discord with board members, Commissioner Pownall took the lead later in Tuesday morning's session and asking his fellow commissioners to help locate some needed revenue for a struggling Paulding Family Alliance.
Well, we had Linda Verschaeren from the Family Alliance of Paulding speak to us today, and basically they're struggling. Some of what they do is they facilitate visitations with foster children that are in custody, with foster children with siblings. A lot of times when you get children in that are pulled out of a home and they become awarded to the state through DFACS, and then DFACS puts them in a foster home. A sibling group of three may or may not be together. You might have two in one, you might have all three together, you could have all three separate. And those children get visitation, need to have visitation with each other. They need to have it with mom. Sometimes it's got to be with mom and then with dad separate, sometimes grandparents. And so that Family Alliance Center, they facilitate those visitations, help out the foster families. And that's a great service that they provide. It's a much needed service. And if you've noticed the last few weeks, DFACS has kind of been in the news, and I'm talking about statewide in the news. And Through the last few years of our economy, the state's cut funding, and DFACS has struggled with that. The caseworkers are overloaded, overworked, and we need to have, they do a service for us, we need to have facilities like the Family Alliance Service Center out there doing what they do to facilitate those visits. And
For Paulding.com, I'm Richard Grant.